is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 204. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him... Sitting here on a Wednesday, beautiful, blustery, Austin, Texas. And we are once again having connection issues. So I'm just like, it may not come through for the listeners and for the viewers, but ultra frustrating for you and I. So outside of that, how you feeling, my friend?
Amped up, man. Can't wait for Saturday. Cannot wait to be back at the Q. Can't wait to see this team. I'm expecting a hungry Austin FC side that's energized by being back here in the 512 in front of our dedicated fan base. So I am just counting the hours until me and you are walking into that stadium, getting ready for this Colorado Crapids team to come in here and let us handle some business.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. I second that. Just chomping at the bit all week to get back and have another opportunity to get that sour taste out of our mouth. The disappointment, right? Like I said a bunch on Sunday, I know the Moon Tower guys were classifying it as annoying, and I think that is a fair way to put it as well. So again, that's the beautiful thing about a long season like this is there is another opportunity just a few days later to kind of right the ship, so to speak. So we'll get into our Colorado preview here today. We'll talk about maybe some potential changes we could see on the Austin FC side of things. We will also preview the second team season opening match that is also against Colorado Rapids and their second team. And then we'll close out the episode with a little bit of nonsense. But before we get into episode 204, just want to remind you all listening or watching on the YouTube channel that the best way to support the show, you can actually support us financially by downloading the audio version of all of our episodes. And you can do that by going to wherever you get your podcast. You can toggle on auto downloads and you can support us going forward. You don't have to think about it again. You can also go the extra mile, rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. You can also subscribe to us if you're watching on the YouTube channel, and that really does help us grow the show. On YouTube, you can hit the notification bell and know when a live stream pops up or a new episode goes live. And of course, on this episode, like the video, hit that thumbs up, help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords, atone for your sins. Wash yourselves clean in the waters of the North End. So Colorado coming to town this Saturday night, kickoff set for a few minutes after 7:30 at Q2 Stadium. Colorado coming in on 2 points. They had a 0-0 draw in their first regular season match at St. Louis City, and then a 3-3 barn burner against Frisco. That was Colorado's home opener this past Saturday. So a team that is coming in 2 weeks into the season, 1 point below Austin in the standings. But as we tend to do, I want to take a look back first, especially here early in the season, where we've got some new fans on board. We haven't seen this team in a while, although we did see the Rapids at Q2 Stadium on decision day last year. And so just talking about that kind of all-time head-to-head, right? 9 meetings between these two. Austin has won just 3. Colorado has won 4, and there have been 2 draws. I believe both of those draws took place at Q2 Stadium. This is a team that we have not been able to beat wire to wire. All 3 of the victories against Colorado, and of course, the first one, right, similar to Portland last week, like this is also a club where we have the OG fans will always have a special place in their heart for the Colorado Rapids because that's where we got our first ever win as a club, right? Denverde, the 3-1. You can go into our match preview article at thenorthendpodcast.com, and there is a link to that, the highlights from that match. Colorado comes up on the schedule. You always got to go relive that. But none of our 3 wins against Colorado have been anything but in comeback fashion, because in that first win back in April 21, Colorado scores first. You'll also see Diego Rubio on the Colorado side of things in those highlights, just giving Stuver hell for 90 minutes. But man, then in 2022, up in Colorado, I believe that was actually an Independence Day game. We go down 2-0, come back to win 3-2. That was the Maxi Urruti, the Iawara, right? The false handball. Right? So he claimed, and then he goes and gets it back. And then on decision day last year, right? 3-2, 2 goals in stoppage time, one by Ethan Finley and then by Brendan Heinzike to win. And so this is a team coming in, right? We just have not had an easy time against Colorado, despite the fact that we have multiple good memories from facing off against this team. We also have some frustrating ones as well. I will always remember Kevin freaking Cabral, who has made a nice little career for himself here in Colorado, kind of kickstarting this boost over the last 2.5 seasons by getting a late equalizer against us. I want to say that was early 2023, but it just hasn't been always the smoothest of sailing against this franchise. And I would love to have one of those just like wire-to-wire victories, early goal, don't have to come from behind to get 3 points at home. But I always kind of like diving into these kind of historical head-to-heads, even though we're a young club.
Yeah, it's always fun to go back and look, particularly at this matchup, because as you mentioned there's been quite a few fun games that have gone down to the wire with some late goals and some late heroics and everything like that. But look, man, I don't want to burst your bubble here. I don't know if that's coming this Saturday from what we know about this Colorado side and their offensive firepower. I know you want to get into some of their players and what they like to do and everything like that. So I'll pass this back to you, brother.
Yeah, and again, early in the season, just a short history lesson on the Rapids, because we talked about the Timbers and all of their success in their 15-plus years now in MLS. The Rapids were one of the 10 founding members of MLS back in 1996. And I did find this interesting. I remember this now after reading it last night, that their original colors were actually green was their primary color when the Colorado Rapids first came into existence. Trust me, Austin FC does it way better. Now, of course, the burgundy and kind of sky blue that they've got there. But despite being, I think this is year 30 for the Colorado Rapids if they started in 96, they really haven't had that much to celebrate. Like the club, they did win MLS Cup in 2010. And that was at a point where the league had gone from 10 original teams up to 16. That's still just about half of where we are now. So again, like I put a little bit less weight on that. And I guess if we win one MLS Cup in our first 30 years, with 30 teams in the league, I can't quite call that a failure. But like you look at the other opportunities, right? Whether it's the Open Cup or getting to the CONCACAF, right? Champions League is what it was called before the last 2 seasons, or any of the other external competitions that they have and can compete in to win. They don't have much outside of that, dude. Like outside of the MLS Cup in 2010, they basically then advertise like we are the Rocky Mountain Cup champions, but I think only 6 times. That's like their version of Copa Tejas. Mm-hmm. But it's only 2 teams. It's them and Real Salt Lake. And Salt Lake came into the league in 2005. To win that matchup only 6 times in the last 2 decades. Like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just like, it really must be a grind to be a Rapids fan, especially if you've been with them through these first 3 decades. I cannot imagine only winning Copa Tejas 6 times in 20 years. And we have 3 teams in our competition. Like we've already got 2 in 4 years. So it's just, again, it just makes me feel good to be a fan of Austin FC, even in our infancy here.
Yeah, like you said, they're I don't want to say middling, but they're one of these teams that you don't really see them up at the top of the table every now and then. But like with what we're looking at here, I think that this is going to be a team that we might be jockeying with later down the season for positioning and stuff like that. So I do think that this matchup is important. And, despite the fact that we've gone over, their history and things like that, this is still a team that I do respect and one that has played us very, very tough in all of our matchups. So I'm expecting a really good outing here from both clubs. I think you look at the Austin side coming off that very, very disappointing, annoying, borderline embarrassing loss, given who Portland had available for that game and our inability to score on a backup goalkeeper. And then you have the Colorado side who comes in on 2 points, 2 draws. And I think both of these teams are going to be very, very hungry to get 3 points here and start to change the trajectory of what, the momentum, how the clubs are looking going forward as we start to pick up here. Like, we're going to start ramping up quite fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that the whoever the North End podcast equivalent is for the Rapids, I'm sure they have a lot of, or they are very encouraged heading into this season as well, because while, like you said, this has been a middling club, even going back prior to when Austin FC began play in 2021. In 2021, that was actually kind of the Rapids' high point over the last 10 years or so, because they finished top of the Western Conference table back in 2021, which makes that victory over them that season even more impressive considering what Austin was working with. But they finished second in the Shield standings then, and then drop off even further the year after that in 23. But they really reconfigured their roster, not just with some big acquisitions, but changing the head coach as well at the end of 2023, and then the player acquisitions leading into last season. The two guys with probably the biggest names here in terms of their name value in the American soccer arena here, Georgi Mihailovic came back to MLS. He's kind of their talisman midfielder there, wearing number 10. And then Zach Steffen, right? And I think we could certainly have a debate on how good Zach Steffen may or may not actually be. But as a guy who represents the U.S. at the national team level, played with Manchester City, or didn't play with Manchester City all that long, but was under contract with them and then loaned out a few times. Those two, plus a guy like Hafa Navahu, right, who they purchased after his loan expired in the middle of last season to lock him in as a designated player. This is a team last year that, while they finished seventh, and partially in thanks to Austin defeating them from behind at the end on decision day last year, dropping a couple seeds, if I recall correctly. Like, this is not a team that had a ton to do in the offseason. And you can see now we can bring these roster profiles into our previews here now, again, especially with the color coding that the league has done for us. This roster is built out, man. They got 3 DPs. They got 3 U22s thanks to some offseason intra-league trades. And they've got 5 TAM players, right? I believe they do have 2 senior slots open here. I believe this is only 18 senior slots, but you can see, right, they've got 2 GA guys in Alex Harris and my guy Kamani Stewart-Baines. They've got 4 homegrown players, right? They've loaned somebody, that's actually Amadou, who we will see at Palmer Field. You can see they're unavailable on loan. And then, of course, Nate Jones, who was an Austin FC player for like 12 minutes before being traded for some sweet, sweet gam. He is actually, I believe, on loan to the USL side. I don't remember which one, but I just wanted to use this visual to illustrate where they just did not have a ton of work or even really wiggle room to make too many significant moves this offseason. But number one, right, we talked about on the pod last season when Moise Bombito, the former MLS Super Draft pick, got sold to Nice in France for $7 million. And that's our dream one day, to sell a Super Draft pick for anywhere as close to $7 million would be fantastic. But they then, of course, like, we got to replace one of our best players, especially on that back line. They did a little like package deal with FC Cincinnati. They trade $1 million in GAM back in December for both Chidozie Awaziem and Ian Murphy, both guys playing center back, and both guys with Andreas Maxu out to begin this season. Those two guys have been their center back pairing in all 4 games they have played so far. And I mentioned 4 games. That's because this team qualified for the CONCACAF Champions Cup last season by way of their 3rd place finish in Leagues Cup. Very, very exciting PK shootout victory over Club America last year to get that berth. So they did match up with LAFC. They played that first round 2-leg matchup and ended up 2-2 on aggregate and lost on the away goals tiebreaker, which was certainly a little bit of a letdown here for Colorado. But now they're coming into this one against Austin on a full week's rest for the first time this season. And they weren't done with intra-league moves after those 2 center backs here, They added 2 of those U22s, Josh Atencio and Ted Kudipietro, both very, very highly regarded young players being traded over, but really for cap purposes from Seattle and DC United, respectively. Cudi Pietro, $1.12 million transfer from DC on February 10th. Josh Atencio, $1.3 million in GAM, split across this season and next, 5 days after that. So these two young guys are expected to play, I think, starting caliber roles. Cudi Pietro, I think lucky for us because he is a very exciting young player. He is expected to miss this match and not really, I don't think he's supposed to be back until like early April. There is kind of not to the level that Portland was missing important guys last week, but like they have not had terribly great injury luck to begin this year either. So I expect to see Atencio potentially, I think, still in his starting role in the defensive midfield. But I think Ted KDP there, as some folks call him, going to miss this one. So those are really the big acquisitions. They lost Lalas Abubakar. Of course, he decided to sign as a free agent in the hellscape known as Frisco. So Lalas, right, had his little revenge game last week in the 3-3 draw back up there at Colorado, but they lost, I think it was Jonathan Lewis, who was a winger for them. He left. Jasper Loffelson got selected by San Diego in the expansion draft. But none of those guys, like Lewis played a good amount of minutes last year, but none of those guys were like top half talents on their team last year. Loffelson and Lalas were not regular starters for this team when everybody was healthy last season. So I do think they improved around the margins. I'm not sure there's really much of a question about that. But this is still a team that was 7th last year, and we know how tight things can be. So I think I agree with your assessment, ultimately, that this is going to be a middling team, with the biggest threat being I think they can score with almost anybody. And I think, conversely, I think we can get out and beat them in some transition moments because the transition defense was quite poor last year from this Colorado team. And I think maybe you saw a little bit of that on decision day last year as we were kind of limping to the finish. Are there any names on this roster that I brought up or didn't bring up that you kind of have your eye on?
No, I mean, you brought up the big ones for me, Georgie and Navajo, two very, very good players. This is news to me that Kevin Cabral is a designated player.
So I think this is still, I actually don't know, but when he got traded from the Galaxy, because he was a DP for the Galaxy coming in, they traded him to Colorado, and he was still a DP for Colorado, but the Galaxy were paying a portion of his salary. I'm not sure if we're past that or if we're on, like, his contract is through 25 with a 26 option. So this is probably still that same contract. So I believe that's why he is a DP, because he was already one on this contract with the Galaxy. And I think no matter who is paying that salary, I think it's whatever it is, enough of it is being paid by Colorado where he is hitting as their third DP. So I would imagine that Colorado fans are like, he hasn't been nearly as bad for this team as he was for the Galaxy, just kind of non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was a Colorado fan, I think I would be looking forward to that contract expiring and bringing in somebody that I would consider more that DP level player, because he's shown flashes, but it's nowhere near consistent enough from what you want out of one of those slots.
No, not at all. I mean, you compare him right to his counterpart there in Navajo, and Cabral's got 8 goals for Colorado, and Navajo's sitting on 20, 17 coming last season. Yeah. Am I making this up, or did Cabral play in a next pro game versus Austin?
Oh, dude, Colorado does some wacky shit with their second team. And I was actually going to bring that up in the Rapids 2 preview that we'll have a little bit later. But they had 2 years ago, they played like almost a first team lineup for a second team game. I think they had a bye week. So they basically used like 60 minutes of an X Pro match to get I think Diego Rubio played like 60 minutes that match. Like there was some legit MLS like designated players playing at like, I think they play at the University of Denver, if I'm not mistaken. But and you saw some of that last year too. Like Lalas Abubakar played 2 matches with Rapids 2 last year. I think they use it as like injury recovery, like building guys up with real game minutes. But yeah, they use their second team a little bit differently from how Austin does.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at this team, right, in their first two non-CONCACAF matchups here, giving up 29 shots in those two
Yeah.
games. And, like, it's interesting to see, right? You get 6 goals in the Dallas matchup and you get no goals in the matchup with St. Louis, but St. Louis was still able to pepper them with, I believe, like 12 shots,
Yeah.
17 coming versus Dallas there. They've given up 7 big chances here. So they struggle, particularly in the defensive transition side, like you mentioned here. I know you brought up some of their depth issues on the wing, kind of rotating Mihailovic out there with Cole Bassett to try to get some wing minutes from some sort of competent MLS level player. So I think that is a point where they can be attacked as well. I know you want to get into a little bit of our defensive structure and how you foresee the most advantageous way to approach this team, but you have to respect the firepower that they have on the offensive side of the ball. Navajo, a fantastic player in my eyes, physical, knows how to score. He's crafty in the box as well,
Yep.
and I think he's a pretty solid target in the air. So that's somebody that I have my eyes on. You understand the creation ability of a guy like Mihailovic, and Cole Bassett really put in some really nice minutes versus us last year. A screamer, I believe, that was up there in Colorado, that he got past Stuver with a potential for a second goal that I think was probably easier than the one he actually scored
Yeah.
and missed on. So again, this is a team that's going to be able to get out and play. They're going to play a much more open, free style than I think we've seen from our first two opponents in SKC and Portland, who were much more willing to sit back in a low block, allow us to engage them, try to hit us on the counter. But this Colorado team wants to get up and down. I think it's going to be a very, very open game. And Austin, if we're at full power, which without Julio, I don't think we are full power, and I think that we won't see him come Saturday. But with Azuni now ramped up, gotten some minutes here, Sabovic coming off about 30 minutes of gameplay in that last matchup, I think you're going to be able to see Austin be an aggressive side and get plenty of opportunities on the net here to try to put one past Stefan.
Yeah, this, to your point, this is a team that, when they're firing on all cylinders, wants to play very, very direct. Definitely different from what we saw Sporting KC do in week one. And then that shorthanded Portland team being a little bit more conservative as well. And like you touched on, this is a team that really does not have a left winger. And you'll see, like, if you go like watch the Apple TV broadcasts and they put up their graphics, or you go to FotMob or any outlet that's going to put up that formational structure, like, you're going to see 4-3-3 more often than not. I think they kind of run this like 4-2-2-2, like a box midfield look, and they allow Georgie and, to a lesser extent, Cole Bassett to kind of float towards that left side. And Sam Vines is out right now, so Keegan Rosenberry has rotated over to the left back spot with Reggie Cannon being on the right. And so Rosenberry kind of overlapping on that left side, especially against Dallas. 2 of the 3 goals came from that side. One was very lucky. Rosenberry crossed a ball into the net. Definitely not a shot.
Yeah.
But then Georgie slipping Oliver Larraz through down that left side as well. But they want, like you said, they want to build through that midfield. They want to be very direct. And so I think that, like, and look, when you get the ball on the foot of somebody like Mihailovic, there's not much you can do. This guy he's a threat, whether the ball is at his feet, whether he's playing somebody in, set piece service. He can score off a free kick. He scored a free kick against LAFC in that first leg of their CONCACAF match. So, like, Georgie is in form right now. And if he is going to float over to that left side, I feel pretty good, because if he's not being marked by a Sabovic or an Ilie in that defensive midfield, you float over to that left. Well, guess who's on the right for us? Mikkel Dessler's over there, and I couldn't think of anybody better to be matched up with him if he is floating to that side. So I think, and again, Colorado could come in and really, really respect the new talent that Austin has, particularly in the attacking half, and sit back a little bit more than we expect. We could see that.
Yep.
But when they do have the ball in possession, I hope that Austin is able to control the midfield and make Colorado try to build down the flanks, because I think, like, if you're pulling Georgie or Bassett or Larraz, any of those guys out of the midfield and making them play wider, I think it throws a little bit of a wrench into what they want to do, where they're most comfortable connecting with those four midfielders all playing off of each other. Even better if you can make them go down their right side and turn
Yeah.
Kevin Cabral, force him to try to be a playmaker instead of a finisher, right?
Yeah.
Make the role player try to elevate beyond what you think his level is, and keep the ball away from number 10, man. Like, I'm saying
Yeah.
so much about Mihailovic. Cole Bassett is a huge threat as well, but those two guys are what gets Hafa Navahu going. And so it's not quite the Spider-Man meme pointing at each other, but like, this is a team with a very talented, pretty expensive front line, similar to Austin, and a team with a pretty stout back line, right? Like, Rosenberry is typically on the right. He's on the left right now with Vines out. But to have a guy like Reggie Cannon be the backup right back who can step in a pinch here for them, like, they have depth, they have talent, and they can score. So, like, I do think – I don't think either team is going to post a clean sheet here this weekend.
Yes. No, I don't as well. I mean, I got to bring up some more Mihailovic. That's because we have to try to really just hone in on the fact that he is the linchpin here. And like you said, he gets guys like Navahu going, and he can set dudes up like Cabral, who are more limited than a player like Navahu. But if you can get him the ball in the right spots, Cabral can score here. Created 5 chances versus FC Dallas, drew 4 fouls. So you get in those set pieces because, like you said, when he's on the ball, it's almost impossible to just take the ball off of him. So he's drawing fouls in dangerous areas for this team to get their set pieces set up and everything like that. Completed 91% of his passes in that last matchup versus Dallas as well. So he's the vocal point for me. So I guess on our side, what do you foresee in the midfield? Because, right, this is where we're trying to focus as well. We're going to want to push them out wide. We're going to want them to play out through those wing players and hopefully see not a whole lot of like strong possession in the mid of the field here. So are you anticipating any sort of shakeup in the midfield? Because I kind of have been. I think you're seeing Sabo ramped up to a point where he's going to be ready for 60 come Saturday if he's called upon. And I think he might get called upon to start.
Yeah, I don't think it's just Sabovic for me. And this is, let's just say, this is what I want to see. I want to see Sabovic in that midfield. I don't think you're taking Ilie out as the newly anointed team captain, right? Even though it's not a guy who has gone 90 minutes in either of our first 2 matches here. I don't know if it's Danny or Owen that comes out. I think for me, I don't personally really have a preference because I think both of those guys are playing just fine. Obviously, Owen had the great week 1, faded a little bit last week. But again, I don't think he played bad or anything like that. I think it was more the coaching on both sides on Sunday, the more I watch and reflect on that. But I want to see Azuni start, man. Like, yes. And look, you ain't going to find the wet blanket here. You want that? You go listen to Landon, who said he doesn't think that Azuni starts. And I think that's totally fair.
Yeah.
But I also think Azuni's mindset, the already outdoing our expectations last week. You said 19 and a half minutes. We hesitantly took a slight over. I saw other people putting lines at like 16 and a half minutes and dancing around that line as well. And we got 30.
Yeah.
So, like, if Azuni can play 30 after 5-6 days of training with the team, I don't know why he can't play 60. And if he's available to play 60, you start the $12 million man. And so he would be in for Hader for me. And I want to see 4-4-3. Just like we talked about after the win against Sporting, we mentioned how excited we were that Bukhari was seeing double teams constantly. And the fact that we don't think you can do that very easily if we have Bukhari on the right, Azuni on the left, and Brandon Vasquez up top. So, like, that's what I want to see. What do I think we're going to see? Man, I'm more at a loss for that. I think because we have so many moving parts right now that are new, and we have a coaching staff that is new. So, like, I can't say, oh, we've seen Austin treat new players like this, because it was a completely different coaching staff, sans Davy Arnaud, right? And so, like, Sabovic playing 45 in the final preseason tune-up, coming on for like 12 minutes in week 1, 30 minutes last week. Azuni 30 minutes last week. I think both of those guys work their way into the starting lineup eventually. So why not this week if they're fit and ready to go? So like that's what I want to see. And I guess if I'm saying what I think we're going to see, I think we do see Savage get the start here. And at the very least, dude, like Azuni at halftime if he's not in the first 11.
Yes. I mean, of course I want to see Azuni start here. And I'm going to put it at 50-50. And like you said, it's hard to gauge how this coaching staff gets their process right in regard to how we're going to integrate these guys and everything like that. But from a fitness standpoint, he looked all the part versus Portland in those 30 minutes of time that he had. Looked like he was ready to go. So I think you're going to be able to get 60 out of him here if he's ready. And like the training staff says, you know, we're not putting him at risk of injury or anything like that. I do think Sabo is a bit farther along. So I think he's probably the more likely start here. And I do think it's for Danny. But if you're going to go ahead and get both of those guys in the starting lineup, then Owen shifting to the bench as well, allowing Azuni to get out there. And what we really want to see is Buka on the right. Like we want to see Buka on the right. We understood the struggles that he had last week in regard to his final decision making, but getting him on that right side where he is more comfortable, I think is advantageous for one of our best players here. You pair that with Azuni on the left and BV up front, and there's not a lot of opportunity to double any of those guys because then you're putting these other two players, Azuni or Buka and BV, in situations where you should have a bit of a numbers advantage going forward. So I'm interested to see what we roll out here. I think the midfield is the most likely spot to get shaken up. And I thought you got some really nice minutes out of Dubo as well. I thought he looked fine in his time. So I think that we have that rotational ability. We have to go back to this Julio injury, right? Because we looked at the numbers. We looked at the way that the team was playing when he was in the lineup versus Portland and then having that early departure at the end of the first half. And it seems that despite the credit that we give him in regard to his offensive ability, his ability to score goals, his ability to be in the box for crosses and find headers and assist on goals and things like that, he may be even more important than we initially thought, particularly with this new bit of play style we have where Ilya's dropping in between those two center backs and then pushing them both out wide and then moving up the flanks that way. So I'm hoping to see a bit more of crisp, dedicated type of possession here because I felt that the Portland game we took a step backwards in the regard to what the offense was looking like and how we were building up. It was much more of a you take it, I take it, hot potato thing, kind of going back and forth through that horseshoe, looking for avenues in. But it wasn't like that Portland defense was incredibly stout. So I want to see more decisive action from the back line, moving us forward, and then hopefully getting guys like Buka, Azuni into space. And we got to get some more crosses into the box for BV. We got to give this dude a chance to go get some headers. We have to. Like, I hope that is being preached because he is one of the more formidable aerial threats in this league. And if he's not getting the opportunities, then we're just not going to be able to do that for him. And like, he needs those chances. I don't know if Buka and Azuni are necessarily the right guys for that, right? Because both of them are definitely much more shoot first, pass second, goal scoring kind of mindset of players. But there is opportunity to get those balls into the box when we have Biru pushed up the flank, when we have Dessler pushed up the flank, who we have seen, particularly from Dessler, who's willing to put that ball into the mix there. So going to be an opportunity. It should be a fun game up and down. I anticipate quite a bit of goals. But again, this is a winnable game here for Austin. Again, a team that I think is going to be right in the middle of the pack, right in the hunt, given, relative injury success. Every team's going to get the dings and banged up and everything like that. And they are a bit beat up right now. But as the season progresses, I do expect to see this team in the middle of the pack jockeying for position, potentially with Austin. So a big matchup here. And we got to bounce back from a really, really disappointing performance versus Portland. So I think both of these teams are going to be hungry. And to your Spider-Man meme kind of point where it's like, there's not exactly the same. We are still seeing, right, like Mihailovic, probably their best player overall, out of position. Buka, one of our best players, playing out of position. Which team is going to be able to find the right formula to get their best players the ball in the right situations? I hope it's Austin because we have more variations and variables than Colorado has at their disposal right now.
Yeah. When going back to your point about we need to get Brandon Vasquez some more service, that more opportunities than we have through these first 2 weeks. I'm encouraged by the opportunity to do that because of what I saw rewatching the match against Dallas, and not just Dallas being able to put opportunity after opportunity, opportunity after opportunity to the head of Pitar Musa, but in transitional opportunities too. Those crosses finding guys open on the back post. Guys like Anderson Julio, right? Just missing some goals that they should have put away in that one. But I also want to talk about, like you brought up Julio, right? And just for a moment, put the tinfoil hat on here with me, E, because we see the club on Tuesday put out a video of like Danny giggling like 3 or 4 times. And look, I'm always down for a look how cute Danny is video. But one thing you see in this video, and you can see him kind of left center on this screenshot from that clip, is Julio going through these warm-up drills with the guys. You also see Mirtu Izuni right center there with his shorts pulled all the way up. So this happened in the last week or so, but I do not think this was recorded on Tuesday, because Tuesday rained in the morning, then got extremely windy. But it was sunny during the entire time that these guys would have been training. And I know the dust storm came in late yesterday afternoon, mid-afternoon. They posted this clip at 1. The guys are also, most of them here, in like long sleeve, semi-cold type of gear.
Yeah.
That was just not the case yesterday morning. I was outside enjoying the sun and a little bit of that wind. But so I noticed that Julio is here. I also noticed the sickos, right? Our buddies over at We Are Austin TV pointed out on their accounts that Julio was here and in training. And I think we may have been bamboozled a little bit here by the club, because I hope that I'm just being a weirdo and Julio is fine and we see him out there on Saturday. That's way better for my favorite team. But I think there's a little bit of trickery here from this post, whether it was intentional or not. I think it was probably just, we have some cool Danny content to put out there on a quiet day next Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
You know me. I went back through old weather reports. I'm pretty sure this was last Thursday. So there's your tinfoil hat. ZG is a insane person segment here on episode 204. But I don't think Julio is playing either, and there's my long roundabout way of explaining why.
And there's your episode title as well. ZG is an insane person.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate Julio to play. We've seen these soft tissue injuries pop up for him, particularly in the beginning of seasons where we're getting full go and the pressure's on, and he's just had these touch and go kind of soft tissue injuries here. The way he reacted was one where I was incredibly concerned, because sometimes you can see a dude rolling on the ground and and then he pops up, but like in that situation when you're just like, oh, fuck, that didn't feel good, or that didn't sound right, and you kind of just lay there waiting for the AT to come check on you, I become incredibly concerned about your availability on such a short turnaround of time here. So I do not anticipate us seeing Julio. And then we get the question, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Svatok? Is it going to be?
It has to be, dude.
You think so?
You can't. Leo's not going from not even being on the trip to starting over Svatok this week. I don't think so. Crazier things, I guess, have happened in our club's history, but I just don't see it.
I mean, I wouldn't put it as a surefire definitively you're getting a Svatok start, particularly if we're looking at trying to account for what Julio does well. I think Leo's better at that in the back distribution wise.
Sure. Picking out those long balls, right? I mean, his first impression with us was the long ball over the top to Seba against St. Louis in 2023, right? So that's a good point.
I don't think it's as clear cut and dry. Svatok definitely. I mean, we anticipated him being in the starting lineup already, and we haven't seen that come to fruition here. You're definitely going to get Leo on the team at this point. I think, when you were trying to get a Zuni into the fold and we were speculating who could be dropped here, you weren't anticipating a Julio injury on that back line, and you had Svatok ready to go and everything like that. So I understand why Leo was there. I would not be shocked. I will say that. I will not be shocked if Leo gets the start over Svatok in this situation, because it does appear that spot talk is looking like you're almost your Mariano Rivera here.
Okay,
Throwback,
sure.
closer kind of guy. When you get a lead, you bring them in and you shut that shit down. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. And again, we still have a very, very long feeling out period with this coaching staff, who they prefer, what they're going to try to do for adjustments depending on game script and everything like that. But I definitely would not be shocked if Leo gets the start.
All right, well, unless you have anything else to add here, E, just one thing left to do. How much is Austin FC winning by on Saturday?
I'm on the fence between a 3-1 and a 3-2 win here, and I want to be able to respect what Colorado can do on their side of the ball from the offensive side. And I still think that we have a few things to clean up on the back line as well. You've been getting some really solid minutes out of Biru and Dessler for sure, but there have been some situations where we're giving up some really, really good chances and looks on Bradley Scott Stuber back there. So I'm going to go ahead and say 3-2, 5-goal win, wire to wire.
Wire to wire. Okay. Son of a bitch. I have written down right here 3-2.
All right.
I've already changed one of my predictions because you stole mine. So next week, I'm going first.
Okay.
But I'm not changing this week, E. I'm with you. 3-2. I think we start scoring this week. No matter who's in the lineup, we're back home. We're, more time to up the chemistry, to gel together here. And so I think, being at home all week, sleeping in your own bed the night before, we start putting them past Zach Steffen. And to your point, I think we see maybe the opponent, who's a little bit more talented than what we think we've seen over the first 2 weeks, able to put multiple goals past Brad. But look, man, we don't care how you guys get it done. We just want to be walking out of Q2 on Saturday night, right around 9:45 with 3 points. So unless you have anything else to add, we can go right into our next preview here.
Let's do it.
Come on down to Farmer Field where the champions play. Get ready for the game. It's Last Business Day.
Last Business Day here on episode 204E. And watching that video, man, I started to get just a little bit sad because there are very few guys in that video left on this roster. And now this gave me a little bit of a boost the other day. Our boy, Bobasi Birawanga, right? Obviously no longer with Austin FC2, but he signed with Oakland Roots in USL. So Bobo still here, stateside. Man, if Oakland comes down to San Antonio, maybe we got to make the drive down there, go watch Bobo play against SAFC, see our buddy Harry down there. But another Austin FC connection there because EJ Johnson, I believe, still on the Oakland Roots. So we've got Bobo and EJ, championship teammates from 2023, reunited there with Oakland Roots. And that was not the only personnel move that caught our eye here when it comes to Last Business Day on episode 204. We just today on Wednesday, we expected kind of a flurry of signings to be announced here as the opener approaches this Friday. And we get one here on Wednesday, Jules Berry. And he's from France, so I'm sure I am not pronouncing that correctly. But Jules signed on a contract guaranteed through 2026 with an option for 2027. Like I mentioned, originally from France. He is 21 years old, joined the Academy of Monaco when he was 15 back in 2019, progressed through the ranks to eventually appear for Monaco's U19 and U21 teams. He also made an appearance for the French U16 national team, playing 80 minutes in a 1-1 draw against Wales. And man, like, you and I are not the foremost experts on youth national team academy competitiveness and things like that. But what I do know from my very minimal viewing of that type of stuff, the French youth national team, man, is no joke. And so even to be on the fringes of that, this is a very promising young player. And look, like we talked about Rodo at the press conference, speaking about how wide of a divide there is between Next Pro and the first team level in MLS. But that doesn't mean that there haven't been success stories. And like maybe the biggest one is Mikhail from Houston, who was signed first from an international, as an international to their second team, came up through their ranks, made it onto the first team, and then, of course, just got sold for a club record fee. I think was north of $6 million. So, like, if you can have one guy every 3 to 4 years that hits anywhere close to that, or even makes it from the second team onto the first team, then I think you consider that a success. And I think Jules is a guy that kind of profiles like that. 21-year-old center back, similar profile to like a Daniel Ciesla or Nico Van Ryn, these center backs that we've seen come in over the last calendar year. So with that resume, man, as a 21-year-old center back coming in, I'm interested to see how Jules looks and how he competes with what I think is a pretty talented center back room. Those other two guys I mentioned and Antonio Gomez, there is certainly some positional battles going on here, even though this roster isn't fully fleshed out yet, at least officially.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see his progression here with the team. And like you said, the profile there getting that one cap with France at the U16 level is or U19 is massive. So you're starting to see this roster come together. And yes, that is the ultimate goal, to get some of these guys pushed up to the first team, potentially get some quality minutes out of them, and hopefully being able to move them on after the fact.
Yeah, and so taking on Rapids 2 here, kickoff will be at 5:30 at Palmer Field on Friday. So a little bit of an early one, maybe battling some traffic to get out there, but always a blast out there at the pitch. Rapids 2, of course, from that championship season, we remember jockeying with them at the top of the Western Conference table pretty much that entire season. I believe the Rapids won all 3 of the regular season meetings that year, even one in penalties in July 2023. But then Austin wins in penalties in the conference finals, and that was the, of course, all-important match to go to the next Pro Cup final. Last season, 1-1 draw in Austin, 2-1 win up in Colorado. I believe that was Irvin Torres' first goal, if I'm not mistaken, and then a 4-3 win at home in August during that kind of climb out of the cellar towards the playoff race that ultimately came up short. But Colorado last year, Rapids 2 rather, was just garbage. 23 points from their 28 matches, minus 17 goal differential in those 28 matches, finished just a point above New England Revolution 2 for the Wooden Spoon here at the next pro level. And of course, Austin ended up at 36 points from their 28 matches. There's not nearly enough information out there to know if any of these new guys that the Rapids may or may not have brought in are going to be difference makers. 2 names that stood out to me. One that I mentioned earlier when we're looking at the first team roster profile was Douada Amadou. He wears number 45, midfielder. He was one of the 5 players on the roster last year that had 20 or more shots and 10 or more key passes. So retaining him there in the midfield, I think he was like 3rd in terms of the FOTMOB ratings for this team this year. But you'll recognize this name, I think. Marlon Vargas, number 39, is still with this club. He was far and away their best player last year, and like best player on a terrible team, puts up a bunch of stats and like doesn't look very happy while he's doing it.
Yeah.
So he is still listed on their roster. I imagine he's still going to be the biggest threat that's out there. Number 39, Marlon Vargas. Led him in goal contributions last season with 16. For reference, nobody else on this team had more than 7 contributions. So you can see the gap there, at least in the counting stats, between Vargas and the rest of this roster. But you brought up earlier that this is a team, a club that has used their second team to put some like legitimately first team guys down there and get them some minutes. The only guy that I really have on my mind right now that I think we could see in that fashion, because both teams are here this weekend, is like Adam Beaudry, the backup goalkeeper. Like, I don't see why he couldn't go play a match for Rapids 2 at the pitch and then be on the bench behind Stefan on Saturday. Maybe we see something like that. Maybe a Kamani Stewart-Baines, right? One of their GA draft guys. I think Alex Harris went back to school for a year, but we could certainly see one of these guys playing down with the second team, first team guys playing down with the second team rather, because they're both here. I don't know if it's overwhelmingly likely, but it did cross my mind. I think the thing I'm most interested in is we only have 16 players officially signed to this roster right now. We know that we're going to get a couple amateur agreements from the academy kids who can be called up to, be on the bench and maybe get some minutes at the end of some of these matches. But I also think, again, we're going to see some more like actual second team professional contracts being signed. And I think one we should expect is Charlie Farrar, the English goalkeeper that we identified out there at Coachella. He has not been officially signed yet, but we saw on his Instagram 2 days ago, he was posting some practice clips from their keeper workouts. So he is still here in Austin. I expect him to be signed here before Friday. And we'll see how this continues to play out. But if we're going to pick an 11 here, Alstrup, of course, the only goalkeeper officially signed on the roster. And I think I'm going to defer the center back positions to the incumbents here with Gomez and Van Rijn. I'm interested to see what happens with Anthony De Anda because Ruben Bonachera played the majority of the minutes at left back last year, and Riley Thomas, second round draft pick, is a right back. So interested to see if De Anda can make some inroads there. I would probably favor Bonachera and Thomas to be the two starters right now. Nerf gun to my head here. Midfield, Abarca, Irvin Torres, and then I think you're choosing your third between Alastuye and Gonzalez, the two newer signings. And up top in terms of a front three, Peter Grogan, I think incumbent Anthony Garcia on one side and Patrick Gaszewski on the other. Although, if Jimmy Farkalin is loaned down, and we saw him playing in their preseason match this past weekend, he is taking one of those winger slots. So I think I would say Jimmy on the left and probably Anthony Garcia there as the guy who has been around, the mainstay on the right with Grogan up top. But this lineup right now is the great unknown. So that's my best guess. And I'm very interested to see, about 5 o'clock on Friday when this lineup comes out, who Coach Utley is going with in the opener.
Yeah, I like that 11. I don't have much to contribute there because there's not a whole lot of options.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll keep our eyes on the potential signings coming in, the amateur agreements, and of course we will be tuned in on Friday, 5:30 at the pitch. One thing left to do in this preview, E, how much is Austin FC 2 winning by on Friday?
Look, I'm going to go ahead and go 1-1 draw. I want to see what this team has here. Same with Colorado, like you said, a ton of question marks all over the rosters in this next pro league. But I do know Marlon Vargas is very good. He was one of their best players, pretty sure, when they were at the top of the table too.
He's
not just
one of the guys who's a holdover.
Yeah, not just when they were a shitty team. He was also really good for them when they were really good. So I'm interested to see that, and I do think that you have to take into account that Colorado is willing to drop guys down to this next pro level to get them time. So wishing them boys the best for sure. Bummed I won't be able to make it, but we'll get up there at some point in time.
Yeah, you got to give us a 7:30 kick on a Friday, man. You can't do the 5:30. No. I imagine that's the case for a number of other fans. Disappointed, maybe being able to get out there for a second half or something like that. But all right, wet blanket. I don't know if you've been hanging out with Landon or not, but give it 2-1 victory. We got a lot of new pieces. I'm not going to predict the clean sheet here. Would love to see it, but we ain't losing the fucking opener here at home against this shitty team. 2-1 victory for me, 1-1 draw, and a PK shootout victory, right? For you?
Oh, that's right. Point? I forgot about that whole aspect there. Definitely, yes. Right, now I'm just a damp blanket now.
Yeah, we'll throw you in the dryer here, and we'll go ahead and move on to a little bit of the nonsense to close out here. We'll talk about some picks in a moment. Just want to remind everybody to sign up at Underdog Fantasy. The MLS season is here. If you want to make some picks on your favorite players in sports, check out Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em game. You choose higher or lower on between 2 to 8 players, and you can win up to 1,000 times your entry. Underdog is available in 33 states, including right here in Texas. To sign up, click the link in the description of this video and use promo code NORTHEND at sign up, and you'll get up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick to get you started. So join the millions of fans who have won billions on Underdog. Promo code NORTHEND at sign up there at Underdog. You can sign up through the link. It's in the description of this video on YouTube or the description of the audio version wherever you get your podcast. You click that link, you sign up at Underdog Fantasy, and you use that promo code NORTHEND. You get the bonus cash, you get the free pick, And then you come back to the northendpodcast.com on Saturday morning and you see what we've got cooking with the underdog pick. So week 2E, the underdog pick does not hit. Unfortunately, the one we gave out, Sam Surridge, only managed one shot. But Bukari, not great shots, but they still count. He hits on the higher than 1.5 shots attempted. And Andrew Tarbell comes through as an anchor for many entries that I had over the weekend. Did very well, unfortunately. Of course, the one we give out here, Sam Surridge doesn't come through for us, but Tarbell comes through in the first half hour there against messy-less Miami. So if you have tailed these two picks through the first 2 weeks, you are up 8.86 units on your underdog plays. Came up short in the week 2 picks elsewhere here. Seattle drops a game. Very similar result in terms of shorthanded RSL on short rest. Seattle rotates. They had a letdown there. I heard on that broadcast, Seattle hasn't won in Salt Lake in 12 years. Wow. That, maybe I should have done that research before. Just, that's not the end all be all. But of course, we were on Austin at plus 210. That closed, I think, at plus 140. And of course, we dropped that one. Inter Miami plus 140 comes through. We get a goal from Yeboah. We get a goal from Chicho. But ultimately, minus 4.7 units on the week here, E. So we're minus 3.6. We've got a little bit of a hole here through 2 weeks. So you can check back in on Saturday morning, the northendpodcast.com. We will have our underdog fantasy entry of the week and our other week 3 picks to help you fully enjoy your MLS weekend here in match day 3.
Absolutely. And I mean, I fat fingered the Surge pick and I had him on shots on target. So I hit.
I know you hit. Well, and like I mentioned, I had a couple other, I don't want to give out all of the freaking picks that I'm making. We keep it to what we think our strongest one is here. And unfortunately that didn't come through, but shout out to Andrew Tarbell, helping us come through there and making that number go up in our underdog accounts. Anything else for you here before we shut it down on episode 204?
Can't wait for Saturday, baby. Can't wait.
Yeah, man. I know we've been saying that in various group chats here in the early parts of the week. And I know those will probably just turn into all caps text messages as we get closer to Saturday here. Very excited to be back at Soccer Church with everybody. Looks like it might be another bit of a cold one. Not quite as frigid as 2 weeks ago, but I think we may still have the long sleeves on here on Saturday. So enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. We'll do the same. We'll see you back here on Sunday for another episode of the North End Podcast, recapping Austin FC's matchup against Colorado and recapping Austin FC 2's matchup against Rapids 2 and talking about everything else that happens in the Austin FC universe between now and then. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll do the same. We'll see you back here on Sunday. Till then, he's E, and I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.